but I fully left believing like there's no other explanation other than this guy has been kidnapped and is living in North Korea.
Totally. What's up, guys? This is Grant James here, and I actually have the pleasure of having Chad Tanner. Say hi, Chad.
Love it.
Yeah, Chad and I live in Utah, and we just did a video on his channel that is about, top 10 Korean speakers.
Yeah, top 10 foreign. I don't know. I can't say it, but the top 10 foreign Korean speakers.
Correct. And in the video, we talk about David Sneddon.
Yes.
So what all do you know about David Sneddon?
So a few years ago, I don't know, 4 years ago now. I don't know how long it's been. Somehow I happen across this story about this guy who went missing in China, and they believe that was abducted to North Korea. And I've always been interested, obviously, for the last several years, and Korean issues, and North Korea is interesting to me. And I was like, what? I was like, this sounds crazy. And I read the whole thing, and it was just an article, so I don't know all the details, obviously, but I fully left believing like there's no other explanation other than this guy has been kidnapped and is living in North Korea.
Totally. So this is kind of a bit of a personal story for me, because you ever hear those stories about someone who's been in a car accident, right? And one person lives and one person dies. There's a part of me that feels a little bit like this, because he and I did all of our Korean coursework together. I think we did, well, not all, but we did maybe four classes or so in Korean together. Then we took a year of Chinese together after that. And David was one of those guys who was just naturally really good. Like, he wasn't a huge, conversationalist, but every time in our Korean classes he'd get up, I'm like, who the heck is this guy? Why is he so... He literally sounded Korean with everything that he said. And then when he showed up in my first Chinese class, I was like, wow, the same guy, same type of interest. And I think he was interested in doing some type of international relations, foreign policy type of thing. Anyway, so we took our Korean classes together. We took our Chinese classes together. And then we were supposed to go on this study abroad in Nanjing, China.
Okay.
So I'm a bit of... I'm one of those types of people where I'm very risk averse. So the SARS virus happened at the same time, not the COVID-19, but the one we're dealing with now. And so I decided not to go. The trip ends up getting canceled, but David's like, I want to go anyway, right? So I guess he had been doing one of those things where you, for that whole year while we were taking those Chinese classes, he was living in student housing with Chinese people.
Right.
So he did that whole thing, and then one of his friends, George Bailey, they decided to go to Beijing together and kind of study abroad there. Okay,
so he gets to Beijing, and basically what happens from there? In terms of, it just seems crazy to me from, my limited perspective, how you get kidnapped to North Korea.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit of context. The month before that is 2004, so this is going to be, July. There were the most amount of people that left from North Korea ever. It was 468 people that escaped from North Korea.
Wow. Would have been Kim Jong Un then, right?
So whoever, I guess Kim Jong Un back then. He wanted to clamp down on that really hard. So I guess what happens is there's a couple of different routes that people take out of North Korea. One of them goes through the Yunnan province.
Okay.
So what happened was, after they did their coursework at Beijing, David and George, they jump on this thing called a night train.
Okay.
Which is, it's a 27-hour train ride that you take. And what they want to do is go check out these really cool mountains that they had in the Yunnan province, the ones that show up in Star Wars with the cool hills and all that type of stuff. So they do that. They get there, and then they decide to part ways. George has something he wants to do, and David says, I want to go check out Shangri-La, which is kind of like the Tibet area.
Oh, okay.
So he just starts trekking around. Now, the report is the Chinese government says that David was on a hike, and then he slipped and fell into a river and drowned and died. But they didn't find a body.
But there's no evidence for that really at all. Other than the fact that he disappeared, and they're like, maybe he fell in the river.
Yeah. So his family was really skeptical about this. David was supposed to meet up with his brother in Seoul afterwards, like around August 15th.
Okay.
And he never showed.
Right.
So within a couple of weeks, his family decides to go over there, and here's kind of a picture of.
Yeah, so I remember the article. It's like his dad and his brother go over to like literally look for him.
Yeah. So his dad, I think his brother's name is Michael or something like that. They go over there, and they're like, okay, our son is an Eagle Scout. We live in the Rockies, right? So we go on hikes all the time. Like, how treacherous is this that he slipped and died? So they go up there, and what they find is the road is highly traveled. Like, even with vehicles, 4x4s, you could take cars. When they were over there, they did this whole show where the Chinese government had dogs and stuff, where they're acting like they're looking for David Sneddon in there, and like, we're trying so hard, can't you see all of our effort? And they put on like this whole show.
Yeah.
But what they notice is that it's a very easy hike. The only injuries ever reported there, period, are rolled ankles or skin bruises. Yet this kid just dies, right?
Yeah. Seems unlikely.
Right, and when they look at it, this high trail in the Tiger Gorge, they call it, it goes down. There's a whole road there, and then there's the water. So if he were to slip there, drown, he would have to fall a really long way.
Just to fall. Roll all the way over.
And all the cars have to miss him as he goes across the road.
And not see him either.
Yeah, and then he has to fall in there and drown, and someone had to see it and know it, but not be able to find the body.
Exactly.
So they're skeptical at this point.
Right.
So they start looking, and they're like, well, where would he have gone? Well, Shangri-La is not too far from there. So what's the path to get there? There's this place called Haba. They go there, and people recognize him. Now, David, since I know him, he has kind of like a widow's peak here.
Okay.
And he actually has a giant birthmark on the back of his head that's a different color. So he's like kind of easy to pick out because he's got some unique features to him. They recognize him there. Then when they get to Shangri-La, they talk with two different restaurant owners of Korean restaurants, and he went there all the time, talk with them. They're like, yeah, he was really good at Korean, and also he could speak Chinese, and he's just kind of this anomaly. What David didn't know is all the human trafficking that was going through there. So the reports are the Chinese government, they take him and they interview him, and they're like, are you helping people escape from North Korea?
Right.
And what he tells them is, no. And they said, well, how do you speak Korean? He goes, well, I was a missionary there.
Yeah.
The problem is, it's illegal to teach about, church-related things in China. So that's like an infraction. But he said that wasn't me, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, they talk with him about these things. Are you helping people escape? And then they couldn't press any charges, so he gets released, right? Then we find out, so this is all that the family knows through 2004, 2005. Okay. Then they get a call from the guy who is in charge of, I forget the name of it, but there's this thing for the U.S. government that is in charge of human rights stuff for North Korea. Right. They call him and they say, I think your son was taken to North Korea.
Oh my gosh.
This is a couple years later, and they're like, yeah, I mean, we think he's missing, but yeah, what are you talking about? So the guy talks to them. There's a lot of things that lined up about the human trafficking thing. And also there was a person who was a big translator for North Korea that they released not too long before that. So they had this missing position.
There was like a need for it, essentially.
Well, yeah. And so what happened is, then we hear a couple years later, this is 2011, Japan has over 2,000 people that have been abducted.
Yeah.
So they have a network of information that kind of flows between Japan and North Korea. And the Japanese people come out and say there's an American that's there. He's been there since 2004. And he's fluent in Korean and Chinese. And who is he? Right. So then as that stuff starts to surface, then they start to get more information about that whole thing. So the update on it is supposedly he's the head translator for Kim Jong Un. And he's married to a North Korean with 2 kids. Yeah. The problem is there's not enough. I've never even seen Koreans talk about this, to be honest. Never even seen anything on it. No. There's not enough conversations going on about this to make it a big enough thing that people like Donald Trump or Dennis Rodman or Kim Jong Un or the Kim family have even addressed it.
Right. Because it's like so much of this like unknown, and there's not a lot of like attention for it, and I suppose like, you know, in terms of what they would be looking for is some way to be sure, right? And it's just the craziest thing to think about that like literally there's this guy, right, who's like, you know, how old would he been at the time? 24?
20, yeah, about 24.
About 24. And, you know, obviously great Korean speaker, great Chinese speaker, and then just like his life is turned upside down. I can't even begin to process what that would be like. Because not only the challenge of like that, like, yeah, you suddenly live in North Korea, like, not only that challenge, but the fact that you can't even tell anybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That you're just like, everybody's just going to think I disappeared and they're going to be looking for me forever.
Did you just get like indoctrinated to it? You
I
know,
know,
like
right?
how do you actually feel about the country once you're
Yeah,
there?
I mean, now it's been what, 16 years? And so now it's like, well, what does he think about North Korea?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he can't be like, there, part of him has to be like, these people like kidnapped me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then it's like you've been there and this is your reality.
And your wife's Korean, and your kids are half.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's like, even if he could leave,
Yeah.
I don't know that he would.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's purely speculation.
Yeah. I wonder what the food's like.
I know.
There's like a lot of practicalities, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Who the freak knows? And it'll be, and I feel like at some point we will find out, like, definitively. Right now, I feel like it's a very, very, very likely thing, right? But I think at some point there will be evidence that comes out that it is for sure him.
Yeah, yeah. The good news is there have been a handful of people that have been like U.S. soldiers, for instance, that have gone to North Korea and then later been sent back years later. The last guy who had that same type of position, eventually they let him go. They didn't kill him. One thing that's unique about David is because it is one of those like thin air situations. Maybe it's just cleaner if you just got rid of the guy. But I would hope that at some point maybe it's a chip that they use, like a gift offering, or you know, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, and I think it's just this whole crazy thing where it's like, yeah, I mean, now he's married, now he's got 2 kids.
Yep.
You know, and so what is that? Like, they're not going to want to let the wife with the kids go.
Yeah.
And I feel like that makes it very complex.
Totally. I think for me, I mean, what can we do about it? You know what I mean? And I know that there's been letters written to Congress and all that type of stuff. And I don't know exactly where that whole process stands today, 16 years later.
Right.
But one thing I haven't seen much of is I haven't seen much of Korea talk about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not their problem. Maybe it's, you know, someone else's problem. But at the same time, I haven't even seen much in the way of awareness. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to an extent, I think we don't see that. I don't even see that awareness a ton here because, like, I feel like it's like a lot of things in life. I mean, clearly there's a lot of injustice in the world and a lot of things that are wrong. And I think people just get overwhelmed with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from, like the kind of like not my problem almost, isn't it? It isn't like I don't see it as like well, it's just they don't care. It's just like you can't care about everything, you know, which sucks. But clearly, it's the type of thing where I wish something could be done, but I don't even know what is to be done. What is the step other than, you know, pressuring, you know, the Congress people? But it's like, I don't know. Do they care?
I mean, I guess if I could like wave a magic wand and say, "Here's what I wish could happen."
Yeah.
Our president is such a wild card.
Yeah.
For good, for bad, whatever.
Yeah.
What if he just like asked?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, is he there?
Yeah. Be like, hey, can you give us confirmation that he's there? And that's all we want to know.
Yeah.
Make up a freaking story about like he wanted to come over, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever way you spin it
From North Korea. Yeah.
No, that'd be like, hey, David actually came to North Korea on his own.
Or yeah, he really was helping people escape, and now he's paid for his crimes.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
Right. They spin everything whatever way they want to spin it, but
let's send him home.
But it would be really nice, at the very minimum, if he could just have a conversation with his family.
Yeah.
You know, let him know about his life in North Korea. It's like if he can't leave, then like, I don't know.
I will say if he ever gets out of there, think about the stories. I'm a New York Times bestseller. You know what I mean?
Dude, he should write 10 books if he gets out of there.
If he can remember his English, or if he's like
Right.
that one.
And so, I mean, that's what I would be curious about, is there can't be that many English speakers in North Korea.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll have their few translator guys, but it's like, they wouldn't, I mean, with North Korea being so secretive, they wouldn't want them talking to people.
Well,
they don't want them, like...
Have you ever noticed that the accents of North Koreans are totally different than the South Koreans when they speak
right.
English?
So that'd be crazy too.
The R's and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is that they don't have this option anymore on the YouTube analytics, but they used to have the option where you could see every country, even if you have one view from that country. And a couple years ago, I had a total of like 10 views from North Korea.
Really?
Right?
You can't see that anymore?
Can't see it anymore. It only lets you see countries, I think, that have like at least 100 views maybe. And so I could see what videos they watched, I could see how long they watched, and I can see what language settings they have on their YouTube channel. And it was like, I think 50% of the views came from somebody whose YouTube channel is set to English, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And so it's like, who the freak is watching from North Korean, right? And it's like,
are you on some list?
Well, I don't know. It's like, I think is this just like some, upper tier person who has access to YouTube and they're just watching it
or
for
is it
fun?
some kid on his phone?
Yeah, right? Like, who the heck knows? And it's crazy, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with North Korea over the next 5-10 years, or
Totally.
who knows how long. But it's a sad situation, and it really that's awful for his family.
Well, anyway, appreciate you guys watching this, learning a little bit more about David Sneddon. I think if anything, at least being more aware and getting more of the word out there that, hey, not only did this happen, but it's still a reality.
Yeah.
If you have any connections, I heard one person say that one of the best ways to help rectify the situation is if more people in China actually know about it, because they're saying most likely there were witnesses that saw that happen and never reported it because they were scared. So hopefully we can get it out there. But thanks for watching, guys. If you're not already a subscriber to Hi Tede, go check it out. Thank you so much.
My wave was late, but whatever.